Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. Welcome to an awards retrospective of the 2006 Academy Awards, in which Crash won Best Picture, and it was considered maybe the biggest mistake that the Academy has ever made in all of their history.
Really, depending on your reading of Crash.
Even not so. Unless you somehow don't like Brokeback Mountain, it's pretty safely consider it a mistake.
Weirdly enough, though, I think there's a lot of people who still like Crash. It has a very high IMDb score. People are swooned by it. Sort of serenaded by the weavings of these ensembles, the melodramatic fashion of it all, and the sort of ambiguous commentary on race, and how we're all just bouncing into each other.
And car crashes. I haven't seen Crash until this week in preparation for this video, and I was told, oh, this is like a Green Book win, and I was like, all right, like Green Book couldn't be too bad, but this was just weird.
Are we like giving our thoughts on Crash?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
All right, let's do it. All right, yeah.
I'm
ready. I'm
I
ready
was weirded out by, first and foremost, how the movie like injects race as the conflict of every scene where it just like suddenly pops up. Paul Haggis was just reaching his like claw down and like arranging things and making them fit into whatever sort of thing he wanted to say. It didn't feel like an organic movie, and it felt like it had an understanding of race in like a colorblind sort of way.
It was a movie about racism from white people's perspective, I think. I mean, there's like no two ways around it for me. Like, I do not think a non-white person in the United States would have written this kind of movie. Everybody's equal in their prejudices. You could be white, you could be black, you could be Asian, and every single race you're gonna see, you are just as guilty of being biased. And it's all just a problem of how biased you are. I was like really trying to like it, try to give it the benefit of the doubt. The problem for me is the characters do things that don't feel real. They don't really feel like real people. It feels like every character is just what Paul Haggis like needed them to be.
Yeah, it's like really forced.
For that, you know, their little chess piece in his game. The way that the movie treats race is the exact same as just treating prejudice in general. I think racial prejudice is sort of its own thing. It has its own history, and there's just so many other facets to it. Prejudice is just something that's very obvious. It's what you think of a stranger before you see them.
It just erupts like all the time, like as if the world we live in, like if I didn't live in America, I'd be like, wow, they are just heated over there. Like they're just anxious to like get down other people's throats about like race. There's one part where like Don Cheadle's hanging out with like this white guy, and he randomly brings up like, oh, like black people. And it's like,
yeah,
there were a lot of moments that just like were like, what is this? Like, what world is this? So this is like probably the least good Best Picture winner that I've seen. In the context of 2005, it was probably viewed a little differently. Some critics like Roger Ebert just fucking loved the movie. They just legitimately thought it was a masterpiece. Certain like African American film critics associations that like gave this movie Best Picture. So it's not like this was viewed as a black and white thing. And interestingly, like Brokeback Mountain is like so the opposite approach. It's very organic. It just feels like the characters are making decisions for themselves, and it's about how a society weighs down on them rather than giving like all the autonomy to like the little chess pieces.
It's a gut-wrenching film about two people who are in love. It's just an obvious fact of the movie that this is the case, and it just shows like the torture they go through for the fact that they can't choose to be straight. Phenomenal performance from Heath Ledger. Great performance from Jake Gyllenhaal. Beautiful direction. Every scene is just so simple but loaded like with the facial expressions and just like little indications of what the characters are feeling without ever really telling you explicitly what they're going through.
And Brokeback Mountain was viewed as like the first big mainstream, movie about gay people.
It also had a sex scene in it.
Movies like Capote, maybe, like they feature gay characters, but this is like,
their sexuality is never really addressed though. In Capote, like Philip Seymour Hoffman isn't kissing any men in that movie.
This movie got smacked with the label the gay cowboy movie, which, if you've seen the movie, it's just kind of like gross to call it that. It probably felt like, damn, like how are people going to react when this movie hits theaters like everywhere? Obviously it didn't hit theaters everywhere. there were some places, some countries, some sections of the United States that didn't want to show this movie. And you can imagine like conservative pundits or whatever were saying that the movie is forcing an agenda. The question of why Brokeback Mountain lost when it won like everything up to it. It won every major precursor, dominated critics groups. Why did it lose at the Oscars? Like, was this a case of some Academy members being uncomfortable, refusing to watch the film? There are obviously some that felt that way, combined with the fact that Crash had like a very immediate emotional gratification, whereas Brokeback Mountain's a little more of a slow burn. Maybe that's also a contributing factor.
I think it's so strange that this would win PGA and Golden Globes and BAFTA and Critics' Choice, and then go on to miss the Oscar for Crash, which is received with very mixed reactions, but had won some audiences over. Crash did have a very passionate base, and the only real thing that won was SAG Ensemble and some screenplay awards.
Yeah. Brokeback Mountain was the first movie that won PGA, DGA, WGA, and didn't win Best Picture. It was the second movie that won Best Picture that wasn't nominated at the Golden Globes. It was very strange that it won. Crash was the first movie to win 3 Oscars since Rocky, which is crazy because of how often that fucking happens now.
Green Book, Spotlight,
Argo,
Moonlight. Oh, 12 Years a Slave, also 3 Oscars.
I know.
I think you'd have to be willfully ignorant to say that the fact that this was a gay movie didn't contribute to it losing. I mean, that seems like a fact. There were people who were open about the fact they were not going to watch this movie. They were just going to, they refused to watch it. In the same way that people sensed like this momentum building for Parasite, this was the same for Crash. People sensed that there was momentum building for it, buzzing all over like bees after the SAG Ensemble win. And they were like, oh my God, it's a race between Crash and Brokeback Mountain.
Was also that it was going to win screenplay, which, as we know, is important.
Yeah, I guess so. And then it did win editing, too.
They picked a mediocre film over a masterpiece for the ages.
Yeah. And it would be in my top 3 probably, like, any year.
The other nominees, Good Night and Good Luck, sleek-looking black and white, news drama, a very relevant message. I thought if this movie came out today, people would be like, yeah, this is a very 2020 movie. Capote nominated everywhere. Obviously the Best Actor winner for Philip Seymour Hoffman. And Munich was the 5th nominee. Very good Spielberg movie and a critique of counterterrorism. Worth noting that Munich had an issue at the BAFTAs where they didn't properly, they messed up getting their screeners to them, so they just couldn't nominate Munich there. Many thought Walk the Line would be nominated. Very similar, if you haven't seen it, to Star is Born. You kind of get the gist. Alcoholism, singers, romance,
country.
Yeah, you've seen it. I could see how it would not get nominated, just maybe it's a little forgettable, but it's certainly Oscar bait, and it got PGA nominations, so if people probably do Munich or Walk the Line, which one is it?
I think people were going with Walk the Line because Munich actually underperformed in several areas. It wasn't nominated at the Golden Globes. So Spielberg was getting a lot of director nominations for Munich, so this sort of made sense that it got in eventually. Even Crash, in some ways, was considered, maybe not a surprise, but it wasn't top 3 or even 4, I think. For example, when the PGAs came out with their nominations, there was a journalist, I remember reading an article saying, Crash was also one of the movies to get a Best Picture nomination, but they didn't consider it a frontrunner. They considered the frontrunners Brokeback Mountain, Capote, Good Night and Good Luck.
I think, and Green Book really took a long time for it to feel like a frontrunner, a movie that could win.
Crash had a May release date. Missed a nomination at the Golden Globes.
They nominated A History of Violence and Constant Gardener over this movie, which is kind of crazy. Constant Gardener was probably next in line, probably number 7 to be nominated if there were, 8 or 9. It's also a John le Carre adaptation. Watching this movie, I was not super into it. And then I realized it was Jean le Carre, and I said, there's something about this where I just can't, I have a hard time getting into his adaptations of his movies.
I think King Kong is definitely 7 or 8. King Kong was nominated at Critics' Choice, but it's sort of a Ford v Ferrari kind of pick here, I think.
I understand
where it didn't get all your nominations. But people were expecting it to be part of the conversation. This is when Peter Jackson came off of Lord of the Rings. I mean, he was some hot shit. This movie was really critically acclaimed. Giant blockbuster. So Golden Globes, we have a treat for you.
We do?
The treat is that these were crazy. These were fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
Walk the Line is in comedy musical, so you don't have that one. as competition. You got Brokeback Mountain, Good Night and Good Luck. Those stayed in. Those got nominated everywhere, across the board.
Where's Capote?
Where's
Munich?
Where's Munich?
Here.
Where's Crash? The Constant Gardener. That was pretty in there. At this point, you would have said that's top 5, I think. History of Violence and Match Point.
Match Point got so many Golden Globe nominations and no one else cared.
And Match Point got director here.
It got supporting actress.
Got 4 nominations. Brokeback Mountain got 7 nominations. Did you know that?
It's a shit ton.
That's as much as La La Land.
It's a shit ton. And
it's a shit ton. You can't not win if you had 7 Golden
The
Globes.
comedy category is pretty nuts too. They went like ham on a couple movies. You know how the Golden Globes will just like over-nominate a movie that they put in comedy just to like boost it up? The producers got 4 nominations, including a supporting actor nomination for Will Ferrell.
But one of them was song, so. And the producers wasn't that critically acclaimed. It was just a musical.
They nominated Will Ferrell over Jake Gyllenhaal. How did they not nominate Jake Gyllenhaal yet they love the movie?
Okay, so Brokeback Mountain should have gotten 8 nominations. And then also in comedy, you had The Squid and the Whale, which aged very well. That's a nice nomination.
That movie was robbed for acting nominations, and I'm pissed about it.
Jeff Daniels and Laura Linney were nominated in their respective comedy acting
and Laura Linney should have got a supporting nomination. Mrs. Henderson Presents got a few nominations here. It was literally Florence Foster Jenkins, Stephen Frears,
and it got the
Victoria
same
Abdul.
Category of nominations because Hugh Grant was nominated for supporting actor.
No, that fucking random ass guy was nominated in supporting, and Hugh Grant was like comedy. Yeah.
Oh yes, Simon Helberg or something.
Yeah, Florence Foster Jenkins and Mrs. Henderson Presents were the same fucking movie.
So Golden Globes went nuts on a lot of movies the Academy Awards didn't pay that much attention to. Let's move on to the Critics' Choice. What did the critics choose? They did differ from the Globes because the Globes went really, out there for nominating Match Point and History of Violence. The Critics' Choice did not nominate either of those films.
Memoirs of a Geisha, not really critically acclaimed.
Not at all. But it was just giant Oscar bait. Giant Oscar bait. They had most stacked team of art director, cinematographer. John Williams did the score, and it got so many Academy Award nominations below the line and also wins. So they nominated all the Oscar nominees. They nominated King Kong. This is the only place King Kong gets nominated, but it's not the only place King Kong gets nominated for director. They nominated Cinderella Man for picture and director.
PGA, they just swapped Walk the Line out with Munich. That was really all they did. Nothing to say.
And at this point, I think Constant Gardener not getting nominated was probably a little surprising.
The BAFTAs were interesting, as always. They nominated the absolute fuck out of The Constant Gardener. 10 nominations. That ties Brokeback Mountain with the most nominations. It got fucking director. Ray Fiennes was nominated where he was nominated nowhere else. Rachel Weisz was nominated in lead. They just wanted to give it everything they could.
And also leading up to Crash's Best Picture nomination.
9 nominations for BAFTA.
9 nominations. For some reason, it was nominated for 3 supporting actor awards. 2 in the actor, 1 in actress. BAFTA's jizz on Crash. They jizz on Constant Gardener. They jizz on Brokeback Mountain, which wins. But everybody was jizzing on that, so they didn't. Their jizz wasn't special. They nominated Capote, so this is actually pretty similar to the eventual Academy Awards. You can see that there's a solid top 4. Capote and Good Night and Good Luck are really solidified.
So, if there were 8 to 9 nominees, what would it be? I think Walk the Line was the next in line. Constant Gardener, easy number 7. I would put Cinderella Man next, maybe. It got an editing nomination, supporting actor nomination. Russell Crowe sort of snubbed. At the Critics' Choice, it got director and picture. We can't underestimate that. Those are big nominations.
I would actually put King Kong slightly over that because I could see them going for a blockbuster. And the same way they went for Ford v Ferrari, also only nominated at the Critics' Choice. Cinderella Man only got 1 BAFTA nomination, by the way.
Paul Giamatti?
No, screenplay.
Oh, they didn't nominate. Okay. Oh, and History of Violence may have been nominated as well, I think. It was one of the AFI top 10, it was at the Golden Globes. I mean, the only one of these that has a screenplay nomination is History of Violence, I'm just saying. Director. Easy slam dunk for Ang Lee to win Best Director. He didn't lose anywhere. He won everywhere that there was. And I'm sure that when he won at the Oscars, it was like, yep, and here comes Picture. This was good for him to win Best Director because Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like the Oscars were like the only fucking ones that didn't give him director for that. Like he won director.
Oh, really?
Like everywhere. DGA, Globes, BAFTAs. This was a no-brainer. It was a good redemption. Everything was great about this. Next in line, the only person to get every nomination was George Clooney for Good Night and Good Luck. This is to date like his best movie as a director, many would say. Paul Haggis. Obviously, the Globes didn't nominate him, but he got director pretty much everywhere else. Spielberg for Munich got director everywhere. The BAFTAs was a problem, so we don't really know what they would have thought. And then fifth slot was probably Bennett Miller's for Capote. He got BAFTA and DGA, did not receive Critics' Choice, did not receive Golden Globe.
I could have seen Peter Jackson for King Kong. I keep saying it, but like he got Golden Globe and Critics' Choice nomination for that.
Fernando Mireles got Golden Globe and BAFTA though. Him and Peter Jackson were probably considered possibilities for sure.
And that's probably all I would have like speculated. James Mangold wasn't getting nominated anywhere.
Just like Ford v Ferrari, like we just don't recognize James Mangold for his work as a director. But Ford v Ferrari is better anyway. The Globes nominated Woody Allen. They were the only ones to do so. Critics' Choice, Ron Howard's Cinderella Man. Weird director nomination.
They kind of do that. Like they nominated Angelina Jolie for Unbroken.
Oh, true, they did.
Like they do this shit.
That'd be true.
And I think they nominated like Denzel Washington for Fences. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they do that.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Best Actress. This was a no-brainer. Easily, Reese Witherspoon's for Walk the Line. Having recently seen this movie, I understand how she won the Oscar. Like, the second that she was on screen and she was singing, it was like, whoa. Reese Witherspoon is so captivating. So much energy. It's just that kind of performance where whenever she's on screen, it's like, oh, like she's just doing a lot. And she was playing a very eccentric character, but she wasn't like overdoing it or being like fake about it. Like she was just being very honest.
And she won everything. And it was also, I'm sure at this point, Reese Witherspoon, she was the kind of person they wanted to give Best Actress. She had been in enough movies. She had proven that she was worthy of the Oscar.
Also notable is that her and Joaquin did their own singing in the movie, which was very impressive to see. So who is the runner-up? We kind of have a clue because the Globes obviously placed her in the musical category, even though that placement probably wouldn't have held up today because now they put the musical dramas in drama. Felicity Huffman won for Transamerica. She was playing a trans woman in that movie. Also, here's another like LGBT film that was nominated this year. And she won Drama Actress, even though that movie was kind of a comedy.
On the betting websites, Keira Knightley was just behind Felicity Huffman to win Best Actress.
Keira Knightley did not get a SAG nomination or a BAFTA nomination.
Oh,
a
wow.
BAFTA nomination.
Other than that, you had like Judi Dench and Charlize Theron for North Country. I think those were pretty expected nominations. The actress in Memoirs of a Geisha.
She got SAG, BAFTA, and a Golden Globe nomination.
So she was pretty close.
She was definitely next in line. Other than that, like that was it. Really, like that, unless you're going to predict some crazy surprise. Joan Allen was nominated at the Critics' Choice for The Upside of Anger. Gwyneth Paltrow for Proof at the Golden Globes. It was really just these six, basically.
And Best Actor was the same in that there was one actor who swept everything.
Yep.
And that was Philip Seymour Hoffman for Capote. I mean, all you have to do is see like the trailer and it's an Oscar-winning performance. Like that's it.
You can
That's
close your
all it took
eyes
him
and you can listen to the
win the
trailer. And then you'll go, well, I listened to the trailer. Where was Philip Seymour Hoffman? And then you'll realize that he won that's why he won the Oscar. The voice, it does not sound like it came out of Philip Seymour Hoffman. But, the performance was much more than the voice, too.
And interestingly, this was also, just like Reese Witherspoon, this was his first nomination. I mean, he was in lots of serious movies before this, like Paul Thomas Anderson's films. But this seemed to be like his breakout. And I'm sure Reese Witherspoon considered the same thing. She was nominated for a few Golden Globes. They broke in fast to that Oscar race. And it still applies that you don't need previous nominations to win the Oscar.
Well,
you
that's
really
actually more true here than ever because every acting winner, it was their first nomination. If Philip Seymour Hoffman didn't sweep, which was righteous and just, it would have probably been Joaquin Phoenix for Walk the Line. I would think just because he's playing Johnny Cash.
Actually, many people beg to differ. The betting odds were favoring Heath Ledger as the runner-up. First of all.
Really? The other four, like, there was a solid ass four. I mean, what are you going to do with this four? Hoffman, Phoenix, David Strathairn, Good Night and Good Luck. Heath Ledger, Brokeback Mountain. Like, they were nominated everywhere. David Strathairn, I think that's interesting that he was nominated everywhere because he's excellent, but he doesn't scream or cry. And then he beats out Russell Crowe, whose performance is like such bait. He's like, and he doesn't get nominated.
And Russell Crowe was nominated everywhere else?
He wasn't nominated at the BAFTAs.
Oh, no BAFTAs, but they only nominated it for one awards for screenplay, so they didn't really like it. So yeah, he definitely, I think he would have been number 5, probably. You know, that would be like a top 6 that I probably wouldn't argue with.
The only person to pop up who was not that 6 was Ray Fiennes' nomination at the BAFTAs for Constant Gardener. But other than that, it was just those 6 everywhere. It seems that you have 6 that you have to nominate, and you cannot nominate 6.
Also, people were feeling Terrence Howard probably because he was in Crash. Heath Ledger in Brokeback Mountain, young as he was, what he did with the role was, I think, astounding. Like, he took it to the next level. He brought a suffering and a pain to that character in just like every one of his movements, everything he did. Every time I see him on screen, like I want to weep for him.
Yeah, and he was
just a shout out. Yeah.
So he's just like in pain. Moving on to the supporting categories. Supporting actress. This was not a no-brainer. Actually, both the supporting categories were pretty up in the air in some ways. Rachel Weisz for The Constant Gardener won her Oscar here. She won the Golden Globe and she won the SAG. So she was predicted to win. But the BAFTAs put her in the lead, so they had to give it to somebody else. At the Critics' Choice, it was a tie. And Rachel Weisz was not among the tie. It went to Michelle Williams and Amy Adams, which was probably nuts. That was probably a nuts Critics' Choice tie. Especially seeing how Amy Adams wasn't even nominated at Golden Globes.
Yeah, and Michelle Williams is interesting how she was getting nominated everywhere and how she was actually runner-up to win on these betting sites.
I thought Michelle Williams was really good.
No, she was really good, but I don't think she was in it that much. It was kind of like how she was in Manchester by the Sea. It was almost the same thing, actually.
Yeah, but it's like every time she's in it, she's
exactly.
She's
that's what I'm saying. Manchester by the Sea.
She's. I mean, I guess she's just the queen of not being in a movie that much, but bringing a lot to it.
But also, Amy Adams in Junebug. I mean, she was number 3 easily, maybe even number 2. Her performance was like very acclaimed, and people like she did a lot in that movie. I think this was an issue of people not seeing that film because it was such an indie. She maybe wasn't like Amy Adams yet. I think this was her first nomination ever.
Frances McDormand in North Country got nominated everywhere too. Her and Charlize Theron, they took it upon themselves to be the movie's only nominations, and they both didn't miss a beat. And then Catherine Keener for Capote got nominated, and this 5 was like
everywhere, right?
Pretty much.
She's in the movie.
It seemed like this 5 was a total no-brainer, actually. But you're wondering, who did the BAFTA give it to? The BAFTA nominated Thandie Newton. They were the only ones to do so for Crash, the one who gets pulled out of the car by Matt Dillon. She fucking won the BAFTA. She fucking won the BAFTA. Probably very the fuck unexpected because she wasn't nominated at the Oscars.
Was she nominated anywhere else?
No.
Wow. I mean, she was good, and I'd say if any supporting actress was getting nominated, it would be her.
Maria Bello was on the fringe for a nomination.
Yeah, it is surprising that she wouldn't get nominated there. She was actually nominated in the lead category at the Golden Globes for actress.
Which you think would only help, like the fact that she clearly has like that much screen time.
But she was snubbed at more than just the Oscars.
From my research, she got a lot of critics nominations too. Supporting actor was at the one acting category that was not supposed to go the way that it did, actually. George Clooney won his Oscar for Syriana. And maybe this was partly because they nominated him for director and screenplay, and he gets supporting actor for a different movie. Like, this is the year of Clooney. Clooney's having a great year, and he's in Good Night and Good Luck. The BAFTAs thought that he was nomination worthy in Good Night and Good Luck, and if I were to say so, I would think that if he wasn't in Syriana, he probably would have been nominated for Good Night and Good Luck.
Yeah, and the only place he was double nominated was BAFTAs. How many times does his name
It's kind of like Margot Robbie in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Just his status as like a Hollywood force probably propelled him to win that award.
Paul Giamatti, though, was the favorite to win. If you look at the betting odds, and this is, this makes good sense. I would have been probably predicting Giamatti because he won Critics' Choice and SAG. How can you argue with that?
And Clooney only got Golden Globe. Who wins at BAFTAs? The person who maybe should have won. Jake Gyllenhaal in Brokeback Mountain. Excellent performance.
Practically a lead, too. Paul Giamatti not nominated at the BAFTAs? What? The fuck?
I think this would have been like a real upset too, because George Clooney being double nominated here, people would have been saying he's a lock to win for Syriana, especially with no Giamatti. I'm gonna go with Jake Gyllenhaal. If he didn't direct and write a film this year and wasn't just everywhere, maybe he wouldn't have won. Maybe Giamatti would have an Oscar. And Giamatti's still Oscarless. And who else was in this category? Matt Dillon nominated everywhere for Crash. I'm surprised by that, actually, after having seen the movie, because I think it's hard to single anybody out. I wouldn't have singled him out as being like the best performance. He kind of disappears like halfway through the movie almost.
It seemed that people were like really comfortable with singling him out. I think the thing was that like he had like the dad who was like old or whatever.
But his character was also really despicable.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Extremely so. And it wasn't like he played a villain like super well. It was just the fact that the character did something really awful and then he's like sort of a nice guy. I didn't really know how to feel about that character, which is kind of the point.
I think,
but I don't think it's like his performance. It was just sort of the writing.
You know, that's just kind of the association with that category is like, oh, you put like the villain and supporting. It's just like what you do. There were groups that were double nominating supporting actors from Crash. For some reason, they thought Don Cheadle was like the guy to put second. Like he got a SAG and a BAFTA nomination.
Probably just because he has like the most status, and he was in Hotel Rwanda.
Yeah, Terrence Howard got the Critics' Choice nomination. I think that's more understandable that he was nominated. Why not Michael Pena? If you're going to nominate someone, I thought he was like kind of the best in the movie. Am I wrong about that?
I would have said maybe him.
I wouldn't imagine that he was very well known at the time, I guess. But who did this fifth slot go to? I would have said that Don Cheadle was going to be predicted to get nominated because of that SAG. But it went to someone who got no prior nominations. William Hurt, A History of Violence. This was not fucking expected. Maria Bello was getting more nominations, not nominated.
Even the Globes, who loved History of Violence, didn't nominate him. They decided Will Ferrell was better in
the producers. It's nuts that the Golden Globes snubbed Gyllenhaal for that. Like, what the fuck happened there? And they loved Brokeback Mountain. They nominated it for everything. And then what? Excuse me.
Screenplay was easy to predict the winner. We had a duel between Brokeback Mountain and Crash, and they were in different categories.
Crash was an easy win for original screenplay. This definitely made it like runner-up for Best Picture. The Golden Globes were the opposite. They were both nominated, and Brokeback Mountain won at the Golden Globes. If these two were up against each other, Crash and Brokeback Mountain, I would have been a scared little fucking kitty, because I think Crash would have fucking won.
Crash would have won, and then you'd see everything go downhill. But in most places, like even at the Writers Guild, they both won in their respective categories, and at the BAFTAs. Critics' Choice chose Crash over Brokeback Mountain, and Golden Globes chose Brokeback Mountain over Crash because Golden Globes hated Crash.
Yeah, that's right. Good Night and Good Luck was probably the runner-up. Squid and the Whale. Good job. Syriana was nominated and Match Point was nominated.
Yeah, I mean, all the Best Picture nominees were nominated for Screenplay. And, you know, once again, you have to win Screenplay or Director to win the picture Oscar, it seems.
However, the USC scripter, they went with something different than Brokeback. They said, no, we're going with Capote. They gave it to a movie about a writer.
Yeah, Capote's a talky movie, and they capture the way that character spoke. So that was definitely a big contender, definitely runner-up. And then Good Night and Good Luck. I think George Clooney could have been winning an Oscar if it weren't for Crash.
Cinematography. Memoirs of a Geisha won. It won the ASC, it won the BAFTA. It was expected to win. Brokeback Mountain, obviously nominated. Incredible looking movie. And then we had Good Night and Good Luck, which was like, this is a black and white movie. It's obviously getting nominated, but it wasn't just black and white. It actually like had a really good look to it. You know, the lighting, the camera work, it was all very interesting. It was done by Robert Elswit. We also had Batman Begins nominated. The ASC nominated King Kong for cinematography. That was definitely something that people may have been predicting.
March of the Penguins nominated at the BAFTAs for cinematography. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, they're the only ones who go out of their way to nominate documentaries and other categories besides documentary, which is completely fair. But the Academy Awards never do that.
Yeah. And what did the Oscars nominate that nobody else would touch? The New World. We can count on the Oscars coming through for Terrence Malick. They've done it on multiple occasions. Thin Red Line getting big nominations.
More
Tree of Life getting director. You can hate the fucking movie all you want, but who can disagree? Editing went to Crash. This also won the Eddie. So very similar to Parasite, actually, even though I wouldn't want to compare the two on other levels. Crash wins the Eddie. Crash wins SAG. Crash wins WGA. Parasite got all 3 of those before going on to win the Oscars. When I was looking back and thinking, can Parasite win? I looked at Crash, seeing that it won those things without winning the others, and very similar trajectory.
People always say that you need an editing nomination nowadays to win Best Picture. And, you know, while this wasn't true for Birdman, I think that probably started this year when people were looking for answers, going, what happened? Why did Crash win? How did we know this is coming? Brokeback Mountain didn't have an editing nomination here. I think people took that as a really big sign. You know, in retrospect, oh, it didn't have the editing nomination. Maybe that's really important.
You can look at that at Roma, too.
Winning editing is important. Getting nominated is important. Green Book got nominated for editing when it wasn't necessarily going to win Best Picture. And it's weird that Brokeback didn't get nominated. Part of that movie is just telling story with the expressions and creating mood. I felt like the editors just captured the best moments.
No, it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. It got nominated at the BAFTAs and the Eddies too. It was like
there were many points in that where I was like, wow, like this is really communicating something and they're not even saying anything by just like the way their facial expressions are changing. And that's how I felt about Marriage Story, and it wasn't nominated because they don't like to recognize stuff like that for whatever reason.
Their nominees make sense. Like The Constant Gardener, which won BAFTA.
Yeah.
You know, that's
that
just
had
like
to get nominated.
Cuddy because it's Murielli. Like, that's just what he does.
Yeah.
He's Cuddy. Walk the Line because it's music and having music scenes. Similarly, Cinderella Man, you've got boxing scenes. What do you want? And then Munich getting nominated because that's like a thriller. All the nominees make sense, but you left out Good Night and Good Luck and Brokeback Mountain.
They gave Crash editing for the same reason it got like SAG Ensemble. Like, say it got SAG Ensemble because it was a big ensemble. Like, It got editing because it had to edit lots of storylines. Again, it's like one of those kind of surface level things. Like, they're not looking too deep there.
Production design, Memoirs of a Geisha. Very impressive, like, if you just watch clips on YouTube. Like, it's pretty obvious that this was, like, winning. Somehow, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire managed to win the BAFTA in this. King Kong was the other very big contender here. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory makes sense for production design. You know, just the only reason it probably didn't get nominated was because it was fucking goofy as shit. You know, they had a chocolate, like, river and shit. Edible set.
The crew was eating all day. Everybody on that movie,
they were
going home like, oh my belly, oh my god, another day of work, another few pounds of candy in my belly.
Memoirs of a Geisha, no-brainer to win costume design. Chronicles of Narnia probably was supposed to be nominated, was not nominated.
Memoirs of a Geisha won 3 Oscars.
Every movie that won more than 1 Oscar won 3 Oscars. Crash won 3, Brokeback won 3, Memoirs of a Geisha won 3, and King Kong won 3. All winning in pairs of 3s, just like Noah's Ark.
Pairs of 3s.
Makeup, Chronicles of Narnia. This was actually nominated for, you know, technicals. You'd see it popping up. Yeah, makeup, whatever. Animated feature, Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were Rabbit. Won the PGA and the Annie.
It also won Outstanding British Film, beating The Constant Gardener and Pride and Prejudice.
That is insane.
They absolutely love their Wallace and Gromit. That movie was like insanely critically acclaimed. It had like an 88 or something on Metacritic.
Corpse Bride and Howl's Moving Castle were nominated here, even though they could have nominated Chicken Little and Madagascar. If you were a kid at the time, you've seen Chicken Little and Madagascar. Not the kind of movies that the Oscars want to nominate. They go for the artsier stuff. The Annie nominations for director were actually the same fucking 3. So that director Annie nomination has actually proven in the past to be like quite useful. Foreign film, again, when I look at years like this, I think there's got to be some way that they need to change their eligibility rules. Because I look at these 5 and I go, oh, I watched Joyeuse Noel in a history class once, but I haven't really heard of these movies. And then I look, and Cachet and Old Boy, which are like some of the best of their decade, were fucking just not here. Cachet not submitted, Old Boy not submitted. Something's wrong with this process. They're not nominating the movies they need to be nominating. The big snub here was definitely, you know, Kung Fu Hustle, which won Critics' Choice, got Golden Globe and BAFTA. Sorry, Kung Fu Hustle. Visual effects, no ass brainer. King Kong won visual effects, and it didn't lose anywhere. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, supposed to get nominated, didn't get nominated. So sad. Score. This is a good one. This is a good one. Memoirs of a Geisha wins Critics' Choice, Golden Globes, and BAFTA. It wins all 3. It's John Williams, you know, using fucking like Japanese instruments and everything. On this nomination, here and with Munich, he's fucking double nominated. He became like the most nominated person in Oscars history. So this was like supposed to be a no-brainer for him to win. But then what beats him? Brokeback Mountain. Brokeback Mountain surprises in score. You'd probably watch the Oscars at this point and be thinking, oh, they love Brokeback Mountain. It's just going to sweep tonight. This was an excellent fucking decision. You know, the theme, like, it's just recognizable. Yeah. Like, the guitar is so expressive. Like, only a few notes on that guitar, and you're like, oh, fuck, it's the Brokeback Mountain theme. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. And just the way that it used the acoustic guitar.
3 6 Mafia won the Oscar for It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp from Hustle and Flow. You should go watch their acceptance speech on YouTube. It's pretty hilarious. And this was the second rap song to win the Oscar. Brokeback Mountain was supposed to be nominated. I don't know what happened here, but it just wasn't.
Sound went to King Kong, pretty obviously. And you also have Memoirs of a Geisha in both sound categories here. Kind of interesting.
You know what else?
Other than that, you had War of the Worlds in both sound categories. And there's only 3 nominations for sound editing.
This was the last year that they had 3 nominees in sound editing. For some reason, sound mixing had 5 since like forever. But then sound editing, they were like, yeah, you're only 3, you're less important.
Walk the Line, interestingly, won sound at the Baptist.
And Cinema Audio Society. SAG Ensemble, Crash won. You know, this is like almost not even fair. Like, you have a huge contender that's just a total ensemble piece. It was obviously going to win. Brokeback Mountain has the best performances, but it does not have the most actors, so it cannot win. Unfortunately, that's how SAG works.
Hustle and Flow was nominated, though, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, especially
because... That would have
been
their, like, surprise nomination. I don't even think that would have been predicted to get nominated.
Yeah, and because Terrence Howard wasn't even nominated.
Movies that weren't nominated for anything. 40-Year-Old Virgin, which actually got a Writers Guild nomination. Did you know that?
Oh, wow.
Even if it wasn't nominated at the Globes. Globes snubbed that for whatever reason. 40-Year-Old Virgin got AFI.
Yeah, I got AFI Top 10.
AFI Top 10s.
Notable no-nomination movies, Cachet and Old Boy. Classics.
Oh, Sin City wasn't nominated for anything. You think maybe cinematography.
And that concludes the retrospective for this year in the Oscars.
All the joy we experienced of Parasite winning. It was the inverse this time in 2006. People were extremely upset. You know, they thought they had everything going for it, and it died because people were scared to watch gay people on screen.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Have you ever broken your back?